The shuttle descended through the purple clouds of Valoria Prime, and Commander Jake Morrison watched the palace grow larger through the window. It was massive, built from white stone that seemed to glow in the light of the twin suns. Towers reached toward the sky, and golden banners hung from every wall. This was the home of the Valorian Empire, one of the oldest and most powerful forces in the galaxy. Jake was 42 years old, with gray starting to show in his dark hair. He wore his dress uniform, dark blue with silver markings that showed his rank. On his chest were medals from 20 years of service to Earth. He had fought in 3 wars and negotiated peace in 2 others. Today, he was here to make a treaty that would protect both humans and Valorians. Beside him sat Ambassador Katie Sullivan, a woman in her 30s with red hair tied back in a neat bun. She reviewed the treaty documents on her tablet, her green eyes scanning every line. Katie had been Jake's aide for 5 years, and he trusted her completely. "Everything ready?" Jake asked. Katie nodded. "All the terms are fair. Equal partnership, shared defense, open trade routes. The Valorians should be happy with this." "Should be," Jake said quietly. He had learned long ago that should be and will be were very different things. The shuttle landed in the palace courtyard. When the doors opened, a wave of heat hit them. Valoria Prime was warmer than Earth, and the air smelled like flowers Jake didn't recognize. A line of Valorian guards stood at attention, wearing armor that gleamed like polished chrome. They were tall. These Valorians, with blue-tinted skin and eyes that had no whites, just pools of silver. An elderly Valorian stepped forward. He wore long robes of deep purple, and his skin was wrinkled with age. "Commander Morrison," he said in perfect English. "I am High Chancellor Vex. Welcome to Valoria Prime." Jake extended his hand, and after a brief hesitation, Vex shook it. The human custom was still strange to many aliens, but Vex managed it with dignity. "Thank you, Chancellor," Jake said. "We're honored to be here." Vex led them through corridors of marble and gold. Paintings covered the walls, showing Valorian warriors and ancient battles. Servants moved silently through the halls, keeping their eyes down. Everything about this place spoke of power and tradition that stretched back thousands of years. "Queen Lyria is eager to meet you," Vex said as they walked. "She is young, but she is wise beyond her years." Jake noticed something in the way Vex said it, a hint of doubt, maybe, or concern. He filed it away in his mind. They entered a meeting room with a long table made of dark wood. Windows looked out over the city below, where buildings of white and gold stretched to the horizon. 5 Valorian officials sat on one side of the table, all wearing formal robes. Jake and Katie took their seats opposite them. 2 other human diplomats joined them, a man named Chris Harper and a woman named Lisa Grant. They were good people, experienced and calm under pressure. For 3 hours, they discussed the treaty. The Valorians asked many questions about human military strength, their fleet positions, their manufacturing capabilities. Jake answered honestly. Humanity had come far in the 50 years since joining the Galactic Council. They had built strong ships and trained excellent soldiers. They had proven themselves in battle and in peace. But Jake noticed something troubling. Some of the Valorian officials exchanged glances when he talked about human achievements. Small smiles that didn't reach their eyes, subtle looks that suggested they didn't quite believe him, or didn't think it mattered. One official, a stern-faced woman named Commander Talra, spoke up. "Your species is very young, Commander Morrison. You have been in space for barely a century. The Valorian Empire has existed for 10,000 years. Surely you understand that experience matters?" Jake kept his expression neutral. "Experience does matter, Commander. That's why we're here to learn from you and to share what we know. Partnership means both sides bring something valuable to the table." Talra's silver eyes narrowed slightly, but she said nothing more. When the meeting ended, Vex escorted them to their quarters in the palace's guest wing. The rooms were luxurious, with soft beds and windows that showed the sunset turning the sky orange and pink. "Tomorrow, You will meet Queen Lyria herself, Vex said. The formal treaty signing will take place in 3 days, in the throne room before all the great houses of Valoria. After Vex left, Katie sat down on the couch with a heavy sigh. Did you catch those looks? She asked. I caught them, Jake said. He stood at the window, hands clasped behind his back. They don't respect us, Chris said quietly. He was a tall man with brown skin and careful eyes. They think we're children playing at being adults. Some of them do, Jake agreed. Not all. Vex seems fair. But some of them, yes. Lisa paced the room, her blonde hair catching the fading light. What do we do if this goes bad? Jake turned from the window. We stay professional. We stay calm. We represent Earth with dignity, no matter what they say or do. That's our job. Katie met his eyes. And, if they insult us, then we take it, Jake said simply. Words are just words. What matters is the treaty. If we can secure peace and partnership, a few insults are worth it. But even as he said it, Jake felt a cold certainty in his gut. Something about this situation felt wrong. The Valorians were hiding something behind their polite words and formal ceremonies. Pride, maybe. Or contempt. He had dealt with both before. Pride could be worked with. Contempt was harder. That night, Jake couldn't sleep. He stood on the balcony outside his room, looking up at the unfamiliar stars. Somewhere out there was Earth. Small and blue and precious. He had left his homeworld to come here, to build bridges between species, to make humanity safer. He wondered if the Valorians understood what humanity had survived to reach the stars. The wars, the near extinction, the slow climb back from the edge. Humans weren't the oldest species or the strongest, but they were survivors. They endured. Maybe that was something the Valorians, with their 10,000 years of empire, had forgotten. How to respect those who fought to stand tall. Tomorrow, he would meet the young queen. Tomorrow, he would see if this treaty had any real chance of success. Jake just hoped that Queen Lyria was wiser than her advisors seemed to be. The throne room was the largest space Jake Morrison had ever seen. The ceiling stretched so high above that it disappeared into shadows, held up by pillars of white marble. Each pillar was carved with scenes of Valorian history, warriors and kings and queens from ages past. Golden light poured through tall windows, making everything glow. Hundreds of beings filled the room. Valorians in their formal robes, ambassadors from a dozen different species, military officers in gleaming armor. They all stood in neat rows on either side of a wide aisle that led to the throne itself. The throne sat on a raised platform at the far end of the hall. It was made of crystal that caught the light and threw rainbow colors across the floor. And sitting on that throne was Queen Lyria Velthorin. She was young, only 26 years old, but she wore power like a cloak. Her skin was the pale blue of Valorian royalty, unmarked and smooth. Her hair was long and white, flowing over her shoulders and down her back. She wore a crown of silver with gems that sparkled like stars. Her robes were deep purple, the color of emperors, and her silver eyes watched everything with sharp intelligence. Jake walked down that long aisle with Katie beside him and the rest of his delegation behind. Their footsteps echoed in the massive space. Every eye in the room watched them. Jake kept his face calm and his shoulders straight. He had walked into worse situations than this. When they reached the base of the platform, Jake stopped and bowed his head in respect. Not too deep, he was representing Earth, but enough to show proper courtesy. Katie and the others did the same. Queen Lyria looked down at them from her throne. She did not smile. "Commander Morrison," she said. Her voice carried through the hall, clear and strong. "You come before the Valorian Empire to seal a treaty between our peoples." "We do, Your Majesty," Jake replied. "It is an honor." The Queen gestured to a table beside the throne where the treaty documents lay waiting. "Then let us proceed. For the next 20 minutes, officials read the terms of the treaty aloud. Equal partnership in defense. Shared technology. Open trade between human and Valorian space. Help in times of crisis. It was a good treaty, fair to both sides. When the reading finished, Queen Lyria rose from her throne. The room fell silent. This was the moment where she would sign the treaty and seal the agreement. But she did not move toward the table. Instead, she looked out over the assembled crowd and began to speak. "Today marks a new chapter in Valorian history," she said. "We open our borders to a young species, one that has only recently learned to walk among the stars. Humanity has shown promise. This is true. They have built ships and won some small battles. They have established trade routes and colonies." Jake felt a cold prickle at the back of his neck. Something was wrong. The Queen's tone was shifting. "But let us be clear about what this treaty represents," Lyria continued. "The Valorian Empire has stood for 10,000 years. We have conquered hundreds of worlds. We have built wonders that humanity cannot even imagine. Our wisdom spans millennia. Our military power is unmatched in this sector of space." She turned her silver eyes directly on Jake. "Humanity, by contrast, is a child. A species barely out of its cradle, stumbling into a galaxy it does not understand. You have been in space for what? A century? Less? You know nothing of true warfare. Nothing of diplomacy on the galactic stage. Nothing of the burdens of leadership." The room was dead silent now. Jake could feel Katie tense beside him. Every ambassador in the hall seemed to be holding their breath. "This treaty," Queen Lyria said, her voice cold, "is not a partnership between equals. Let us not pretend otherwise. The Valorian Empire is doing humanity a favor by offering this alliance. We are the senior partner here. The teacher. The guide. You are the students. The apprentices who should be grateful for our wisdom and protection." She walked down the steps of the platform until she stood directly in front of Jake. She was taller than him by half a foot, and she looked down at him with something like pity in her eyes. "You, Commander Morrison, may have achieved some rank among your own kind. But to us, you are merely adequate. A junior partner at best. Your entire species lacks the noble breeding, the centuries of wisdom, the cultural sophistication required for true leadership in galactic affairs." Jake said nothing. His face remained perfectly still. "Humanity's role should be clear," the Queen continued. "You will provide support when we need it. You will follow our lead in matters of strategy and policy. You will accept our guidance with humility and gratitude. This is the natural order of things. The old and wise must lead. The young and inexperienced must follow." She stepped even closer, her voice dropping just slightly. "Do you understand what I am saying, Commander? Your species is useful, but you are not our equals. You may sit at the table, but you will not lead the conversation. Accept your place with grace, and this treaty will serve you well." The silence that followed was absolute. Every being in that throne room waited to see what Jake Morrison would do. Would he argue? Would he shout? Would he defend humanity's honor? Would he refuse to sign? Jake looked at Queen Lyria. He looked into her silver eyes for 3 long seconds. His face showed nothing. No anger. No hurt. No surprise. Nothing at all. Then he turned around. He did not bow. He did not speak. He did not make any gesture of farewell or respect. He simply turned his back on the Queen of the Valorian Empire and began walking toward the exit. Katie's eyes went wide, but she followed immediately. Chris and Lisa hesitated for only a heartbeat before they too turned and followed Jake. Their footsteps echoed in the silent hall. The crowd parted as they walked. Ambassadors from other species watched with expressions ranging from shock to understanding. Some of them knew what had just happened. Some of them recognized the significance of that silent departure. Queen Lyria stood frozen on the steps of her throne, confusion crossing her face for the first time. "Commander Morrison!" she called out. "We are not finished here." Jake did not stop. He did not turn around. He did not acknowledge her words in any way. He just kept walking. His pace steady and measured, his back straight. Behind him, he heard murmurs rising in the crowd. Shocked whispers, hurried conversations. But he did not care. He reached the great doors of the throne room. and the guards there scrambled to open them. Jake walked through those doors without looking back. Katie and the others followed. The doors swung shut behind them with a boom that echoed through the palace. In the hallway outside, Katie grabbed Jake's arm. "What do we do now?" she whispered urgently. "We leave," Jake said quietly. "We pack our things, board the shuttle, and leave this planet." "But the treaty—" "There is no treaty," Jake said. His voice was calm, but there was steel underneath it. "Not with someone who talks to us like that. Not with someone who thinks we should be grateful for scraps from their table." Chris ran a hand through his hair. "Jake, Earth Command isn't going to like this." "Then Earth Command can come here and bow to that queen themselves," Jake replied. "I won't. And I won't sign any treaty that makes us junior partners in our own defense." They walked through the palace corridors in silence. Servants and guards stared at them as they passed, sensing that something important had just happened but not understanding what. Within an hour, they had packed their belongings and reached the shuttle. Within 2 hours, they were leaving Valoria Prime's atmosphere. Jake sat in his seat and watched the planet shrink below them. He had not said a single word to Queen Lyria. He had not argued or protested or defended humanity's honor with speeches. He had simply walked away. Sometimes, silence spoke louder than any words could. The news traveled fast. Within 6 hours of Jake Morrison's departure, every major government in the galaxy knew what had happened in the Valorian throne room. Within 12 hours, it was the top story on every news channel across 100 worlds. Queen Lyria sat in her private chambers and watched the reports with growing confusion. On the screen, a news anchor from the Krell Federation spoke in his species' clicking language, while text scrolled below in multiple translations. The human delegation walked out without a word after Queen Lyria's speech. Sources say Commander Morrison turned his back on the Queen, a gesture many species view as the ultimate sign of disrespect. The question everyone is asking is, what happens now? "They are overreacting," Lyria said to High Chancellor Vex, who stood beside her. "I spoke the truth. Humanity is young. They need guidance. Why are they so offended?" Vex's old face was troubled. "Your Majesty, you called them children. You said they were not equals. You told their commander that he was merely adequate." "But it is the truth," Lyria insisted. "We have existed for 10,000 years. They have been in space for barely a century. The truth can be cruel, Your Majesty," Vex said quietly. "And cruelty from a throne is remembered for a very long time." Within 24 hours, things began to change. Earth's government recalled every ambassador from Valorian space, not with angry statements or threats, just simple notifications. "Thank you for your hospitality. Our people are coming home now." Trade ships that had been heading to Valorian ports changed course. Human merchants who had been doing business in Valorian cities packed their goods and left. There were no protests, no angry words. They just quietly departed. Katie Sullivan sent a single message to Chancellor Vex before she left Valorian space. It was short and polite. "We regret that circumstances have prevented the treaty signing. Earth wishes the Valorian Empire well." That was all. But the real shock came 48 hours after Jake's walkout. The human fleet began moving. Commander Talra burst into the throne room where Lyria was meeting with her council. "Your Majesty, we have a problem." "What kind of problem?" Lyria asked. Talra activated a holographic display above the table. It showed a map of local space, with Valorian systems in purple and human systems in blue. "The humans are pulling back their fleet. Every ship they had stationed along our shared borders is retreating to human space." "Retreating?" Lyria frowned. "Are they preparing for war?" "No," Talra said, and her voice was grim. "They are abandoning the defense zones. Look here." She pointed to several systems on the map. These sectors were protected by joint patrols, mostly human ships, because we asked them to cover this area. "They are all leaving." Vex leaned forward, his silver eyes studying the map. "The Draknor border," he said softly. "Those systems face Draknor space." Lyria felt a cold chill. The Draknor horde was a brutal empire that had been pushing against the borders for years. Only constant patrols and strong defenses kept them from invading, and many of those defenses were human ships. "How many ships are we talking about?" she asked. 73 vessels, Talra said, including 12 heavy cruisers and 3 of their carrier groups. They made up 60% of our defensive strength in that sector. The room fell silent. "Send a message to their fleet commander," Lyria ordered. "Tell them they cannot abandon their posts." "We have agreements." "We have no agreements, Your Majesty," Vex interrupted gently. "The treaty was never signed." Lyria's hands clenched on the arms of her chair. "This is blackmail. They are trying to force us to apologize, but that was not what the humans were doing." Over the next few days, reports came in from across the galaxy. Human ships were pulling back everywhere. Not just from Valorian space, they were withdrawing from patrol routes, from trade convoys, from peacekeeping missions. Any operation that involved Valorians, humans were leaving. And yet they were not making demands. No one from Earth's government had contacted Valoria at all. There were no threats, no ultimatums, no requests for apologies. The humans were simply going home and leaving the Valorians alone. Other species began to respond. The Krell Federation, which had been neutral, issued a statement supporting humanity's decision. The Miron Collective, longtime friends of the Valorians, sent a quiet message suggesting that Queen Lyria might want to reconsider her words. An ambassador from the Trell Unity came to the palace and asked for a private meeting with Lyria. His name was Ambassador Court, and he was old even by Trell standards. His scaled skin dulled with age. "Your Majesty," he said, "I come as a friend to warn you. What you said to Commander Morrison was a grave insult." "I spoke the truth," Lyria said, though her voice lacked some of its earlier confidence. "You spoke your opinion," Court corrected. "But in diplomacy, how we say things matters as much as what we say. You did not just state that humanity is young. You told them they were inferior. You told them they should be grateful for your attention. You treated them like servants, not partners. But they are less experienced." "Experience is not the same as worth," Court said firmly. "My people learned this lesson 200 years ago when we insulted the Miron Collective. It took us 50 years to rebuild that relationship. The humans may be young, Your Majesty, but they are not weak, and they are not foolish." "Then why do they not simply tell us what they want?" Lyria demanded. "Why this silence?" Court's expression was sad. "Because there is nothing to discuss. You showed them disrespect. They have chosen to walk away. That is their right." After Court left, Lyria pulled up files on humanity's history. She had never bothered to look closely before. What she found surprised her. Humans had almost destroyed themselves before reaching the stars. Wars, environmental collapse, near extinction. But they had survived. They had united their world, solved their problems, and pushed out into space with determination that seemed to know no limits. In the 50 years since joining the Galactic Council, they had fought in 7 major conflicts. They had won 6 of them, often against numerically superior forces. Their tactics were creative, their soldiers stubborn, their commanders brilliant at adapting to new situations. They had also rebuilt 3 war-torn worlds, established refugee programs that saved millions, and shared their technology freely with species that needed help. One report particularly caught Lyria's attention. It was about Commander Jake Morrison himself. He had lost his wife and daughter in the Battle of Proxima Station, a fight against pirate raiders that had killed thousands. After that, he had led the campaign that wiped out the pirate fleet entirely. Then he had turned to diplomacy, working to prevent future conflicts. The report described him as a man of strong principles who values honor, respect, and fairness above all else. Lyria closed the file and sat in silence. For the first time, doubt crept into her mind. Had she misjudged the humans? Had her pride blinded her to their true nature? On the 5th day after Jake's departure, Chancellor Vex brought urgent news. "Your Majesty, Draknor scouts have been detected in our border systems. They are probing our defenses. How many? Lyria asked. 20 ships so far. But our intelligence suggests more are coming. Without the human fleet in position, our defenses are thin. Lyria stood and walked to the window. Outside, the twin suns were setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. Somewhere out there, human ships were turning away from Valorian space. Somewhere out there, the Draknor were preparing to attack. And all because she had been too proud to treat humanity with respect. Send a message to Earth, she said quietly. Request a meeting with their government. What will you tell them, Your Majesty? Lyria did not answer immediately. What could she tell them? That she was sorry? That she had been wrong? The words felt like ash in her mouth, but pride was a luxury she might no longer be able to afford. 3 weeks after Commander Jake Morrison walked out of the throne room, the Draknor horde struck. They came in overwhelming numbers. Hundreds of ships pouring through the border systems like a black tide. Their vessels were ugly things, covered in spikes and armor, built for one purpose: destruction. The Draknor themselves were even uglier, insect-like creatures with 6 limbs and mandibles that could tear through metal. Commander Talra stood in the Valorian war room, watching the displays with a sinking heart. We are losing the outer colonies, she reported to Queen Lyria. Crestfall Station is gone. The 4th Fleet has taken heavy casualties. They are requesting permission to retreat. Granted, Lyria said. Her face was pale. In 3 weeks, she had aged years. The confident young queen who had insulted humanity now looked small and afraid. What about reinforcements from the inner systems? 2 days away at best, Talra said. The Draknor will reach the Valor Belt by tomorrow. The Valor Belt was a cluster of mining colonies that provided much of the Empire's resources. If it fell, the Valorian economy would collapse. Send a message to the Galactic Council, Lyria ordered. Request immediate military assistance. Chancellor Vex, who had been standing quietly in the corner, spoke up. Your Majesty, I have already sent that request. 6 species have responded with token support. Small squadrons. Enough to say they helped, but not enough to turn the tide. And the others? They claim they cannot spare the ships, Vex said, or that they need more time to mobilize. Lyria's hands clenched into fists. She knew what this meant. The galaxy was watching the proud Valorian Empire fall, and they were doing nothing to stop it. Perhaps they thought it was justice. Perhaps they simply did not care. What about Earth? She asked quietly. The room fell silent. Everyone looked at Vex. I have sent 3 messages to the human government, Vex said. They have not replied. Lyria closed her eyes. She had sent her own message days ago, a formal request for a meeting. Earth had acknowledged receiving it but gave no other response. The silence was like a knife twisting in her chest. Send another message, she said. Tell them we need their help. Your Majesty, Talra said gently. They already know we need help. Everyone knows. The question is whether they will give it. On Earth, Jake Morrison sat in his office at the military headquarters. He had returned to his command position after the failed diplomatic mission. Now he watched the reports from Valorian space with a face like stone. His second-in-command, Commander Greg Tyler, stood beside him. The Valorians are getting hammered, Greg said. They will not last another week. At this rate. I know, Jake said. The fleet is ready to deploy if you give the order. I know that too. Greg hesitated, then asked the question that was on everyone's mind. Are we going to help them? Jake did not answer immediately. He pulled up a recording on his screen. It was footage from the throne room. From the moment Queen Lyria had called humanity inadequate, had called him merely acceptable, had told them they should be grateful for scraps. He watched it in silence, then closed the file. Not yet, he said. Meanwhile, something unexpected was happening in human space. Valorian refugees were fleeing the invasion, and many of them were heading for human colonies. They had nowhere else to go. Their own inner systems were overwhelmed with displaced people, and other species were turning them away. But when Valorian ships appeared at human stations, afraid and desperate, They were not turned away. Human officials processed their requests, gave them food and shelter, and asked for nothing in return. Katie Sullivan, now back on Earth, was coordinating the refugee efforts. She stood in a processing center on Luna Station. Watching Valorian families walk through, they looked tired and scared, their elegant robes dirty, their silver eyes hollow with fear. One young Valorian woman approached her. She was carrying a small child, a little girl with wide, frightened eyes. "Please," the woman said in broken English. "We need help. We have nowhere to go." Katie felt her heart break a little. These were not the proud Valorians who had looked down on humanity. These were just people trying to survive. "You are safe here," Katie said gently. "We will take care of you." The woman's eyes filled with tears. "But why? Your commander. Our queen insulted him. She insulted all of you. Why do you help us?" Katie was silent for a moment, then said, "Because it is the right thing to do. Come on, let me get you and your daughter settled." News of this reached Queen Lyria. Reports came in of human stations housing thousands of Valorian refugees, feeding them, treating their sick and injured, asking for nothing in return. She did not understand it. If the humans hated the Valorians enough to refuse military aid, why help the refugees? It made no sense. Chancellor Vex understood, though. "Your Majesty," he said softly, "the humans are teaching us a lesson. They will not fight our battles for us after we insulted them, but they will not punish innocent people for their leaders' mistakes. They know the difference." The Draknor pushed deeper into Valorian space. The Valor Belt fell. 3 more colony worlds went dark. The Valorian military fought bravely, their soldiers dying to buy time for civilians to evacuate. But they were outnumbered and outgunned. Commander Talra came to Lyria's chambers late one night. "Your Majesty, we need to discuss evacuation plans for the palace." "Evacuation?" Lyria's voice was hollow. "You think they will reach Valoria Prime?" "I think it is possible," Talra said, "and we need to be prepared." Lyria walked to her window. Below, she could see the lights of the capital city, millions of people going about their lives, not yet knowing that their world might fall. She had inherited this empire from her father, 10,000 years of history, and it might end on her watch, all because of her pride. "I was wrong," she said suddenly. Talra looked surprised. "Your Majesty?" "About the humans," Lyria continued. "I was wrong. I thought their youth made them inferior. I thought our age made us wise. But wisdom is not the same as knowledge. And pride." She laughed bitterly. "Pride is just another word for foolishness." She turned to face Talra. "Send another message to Earth. But not to their government this time. Send it directly to Commander Morrison." "What should the message say?" Lyria was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "Tell him I was wrong. Tell him I am sorry. And tell him..." She paused. "Tell him I understand, if he chooses not to help. But I needed him to know." The message was sent. On Earth, Jake received it in his office. He read it 3 times, then sat back in his chair. Greg looked over his shoulder. "She apologized." "She did," Jake agreed. "So what do we do?" Jake stared at the message for a long time. The words seemed genuine. Not a political apology designed to manipulate, but real regret. Real understanding. But was it enough? Could words erase what had been said? Could an apology given under pressure be trusted? He thought about the refugees on human stations, scared families who had done nothing wrong. He thought about Valorian soldiers dying to protect their worlds. He thought about Queen Lyria, young and arrogant, and now learning a hard lesson. He thought about his wife and daughter, gone now for so many years. What would they want him to do? "Assemble the fleet," Jake said quietly. Greg's eyes widened. "We are going?" "We are going," Jake confirmed. "But not because she apologized. We are going because it is the right thing to do. Because those people do not deserve to die for their queen's mistakes. And because," he paused, "because that is what makes us different. We do not abandon people who need help, even when they have wronged us. The politicians are not going to like this, Greg warned. Then they can court-martial me when we get back, Jake said. He stood up and put on his jacket. But right now, we have a fleet to mobilize and a war to win. As Jake walked out of his office, he felt a strange sense of peace. The Queen had apologized. Yes. But that was not why he was helping. He was helping because humans did not let pride get in the way of doing what was right. Maybe that was the real difference between his species and the Valorians. Not age or experience or wisdom, just the willingness to be better than your anger. The Draknor fleet reached the outer defenses of Valoria Prime on a cold morning. Queen Lyria stood on the palace balcony and watched the sky turn dark with their ships. There were so many of them, blotting out the stars. Her own fleet, what remained of it, was forming a desperate defensive line around the planet. She had sent her message to Commander Morrison 3 days ago. There had been no response. She did not blame him. Why should he risk his people for hers after what she had done? Commander Talra came to stand beside her. Your Majesty, we should move you to the bunker. No, Lyria said quietly. If my empire falls, I will watch it happen. I will not hide. The battle began at noon. Valorian ships threw themselves at the Draknor fleet with desperate courage. Explosions lit up the sky. Ships on both sides burned and died. But there were too many Draknor. For every one destroyed, 2 more took its place. Lyria watched her people die defending their homeworld, and her heart broke. Then something changed. Alarms started blaring in the command center. Talra pressed her hand to her earpiece, listening to reports. Her silver eyes went wide. Your Majesty, she said, her voice shaking. New contacts. Multiple ships, dropping out of faster-than-light travel. More Draknor? Lyria asked, though she knew her voice sounded dead. No, Talra said, and suddenly she was smiling. Human ships. Dozens of them. They are here. Lyria ran back into the command center and stared at the displays. It was true. Human vessels were appearing all around the battle space. She recognized the distinctive designs: heavy cruisers with their layered armor, fast destroyers built for hit-and-run attacks, massive carriers launching wave after wave of fighters, and at the center of the fleet, flying the command flag, was a ship called the Washington. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Washington, watching the tactical display. The situation was bad. The Valorians were down to 30% of their strength, and the Draknor outnumbered even his fleet by 2 to 1. All ships, he said into the comm. This is Morrison. Engage at will. Target priority is the Draknor command vessels. Hit them hard and fast. The human fleet struck like a hammer. Their tactics were different from what the Valorians used. Where the Valorians fought with traditional honor and formation, humans fought with creativity and chaos. They used the debris field as cover. They coordinated strikes across multiple targets at once. They changed plans every few minutes, keeping the Draknor off balance. Jake's flagship moved through the battle with practiced precision. Weapons. Target that dreadnought. Fire everything. The Washington's main guns opened up. Missiles and energy beams struck the Draknor dreadnought's shields. They flared and collapsed. A second volley tore into the ship's hull. It began to list, then exploded in a ball of flame. Good shooting, Jake said. Navigation, bring us around. Let's help those Valorian ships on the left flank. For 3 hours, the battle raged. Human and Valorian ships fought side by side now, covering each other's weaknesses. The Valorians had stronger shields. The humans had better maneuverability. Together, they were more than the sum of their parts, but the Draknor were not giving up. Their command ship, a massive vessel 3 times the size of the Washington, hung back from the main battle. Directing their forces, Jake studied it on his display. If we take out that command ship, the rest will scatter. It is too heavily defended, Greg said. We would lose half our fleet trying to reach it. Then we do not go through the defenses, Jake said. We go around them. He opened a channel to his squadron leaders. Listen up. We are going to do something crazy. Here is the plan. 10 minutes later, 20 human ships broke from the main battle and accelerated toward the planet. The Draknor assumed they were retreating and mostly ignored them. But as they swung around the planet's curve, they suddenly changed course and came up behind the command ship from below, where its defenses were weakest. Jake's ship led the charge. All weapons, fire! The attack caught the Draknor completely by surprise. Their command ship's lower shields collapsed under the sudden barrage. Human torpedoes tore into its engines. The massive vessel started to break apart. Jake saw a section of the hull separate, an escape pod or shuttle. The Draknor commanders were fleeing. Let them go, he ordered. Finish the ship. The command vessel exploded in a blast so large that it lit up the entire battlefield. For a moment, everything seemed to freeze. Then the Draknor fleet began to fall apart. Without their central command, their coordinated attacks dissolved into chaos. Ships began retreating, fleeing back toward the border. The human and Valorian forces pressed the advantage. Within another hour, the battle was over. The Draknor were in full retreat, and the sky above Valoria Prime was clear again. On the surface, cheers erupted throughout the capital city. People poured into the streets, celebrating their survival. Queen Lyria stood in the command center, watching the displays show the last Draknor ships jumping to faster-than-light travel. They had won. Against all odds, they had won. Your Majesty, Talra said, Commander Morrison is requesting permission to land. Lyria's heart jumped. Granted immediately. Have him brought to the throne room. Should we prepare a ceremony? A celebration? No, Lyria said. Just bring him to me. An hour later, Lyria waited in the throne room. It was empty except for her, Chancellor Vex, and a few guards. She had removed her crown and set it aside. She wore simple robes, not her ceremonial dress. This was not a time for pageantry. The doors opened. Commander Jake Morrison walked in, still wearing his combat uniform. He looked tired, with dirt and sweat on his face, but his back was straight and his eyes were clear. He walked up to the base of the throne platform and stopped. The last time he had stood here, Lyria had insulted him, had called him inadequate, had dismissed his entire species. She had prepared a speech, long words about gratitude and alliance and renewed friendship. But as she looked at this man who had just saved her world, all those words felt hollow. Instead, she simply said, "Thank you." Jake nodded slightly. "You are welcome, Your Majesty." Lyria came down from the platform until she stood on the same level as him. "You came back," she said, "after what I said to you. After I insulted you and your people. You still came back." "Yes," Jake said simply. "Why?" Jake was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Because your people did not deserve to die for your mistakes. Because refugees were fleeing to our space and we saw their fear. Because sometimes doing the right thing is more important than pride or anger." Lyria felt tears sting her eyes. "I was wrong about humanity. About you. I thought youth meant weakness. I thought our age made us superior. But you have shown me that strength has nothing to do with how long you have existed. It is about what you choose to do." "Your Majesty, please," Lyria interrupted. "Let me finish. I insulted you. I treated you like a child. I spoke to you with arrogance and contempt. You had every right to leave us to our fate, but you did not. You saved us anyway." She paused. "That is nobility, true nobility, not the kind that comes from bloodlines or crowns, but from character. You are more noble than I am." Jake's expression softened slightly. "Your Majesty, you made a mistake. But you learned from it. You sent that apology." "The apology was not why you came, though, was it?" Lyria asked. "No," Jake admitted. "I came because it was right. But your apology mattered. It showed me that you could learn, that you could grow. That is worth something." Lyria took a deep breath. "Commander Morrison, I wish to propose a treaty between our peoples. A true partnership, between equals. No junior partners. No senior advisors. Just allies who respect each other. Jake studied her face. What changed your mind? You did, Lyria said simply. You and your people. You showed me what humanity is really like. Not through words or speeches, but through actions. You helped our refugees when you had no reason to. You fought for us when we had wronged you. You proved that respect is earned, not given. She met his eyes. I want to earn your respect, Commander. Not demand it. Jake was silent for a long moment. Then he extended his hand. Then let us start over, as equals. Lyria looked at his hand. The human gesture of greeting and agreement. She had hesitated the first time Chancellor Vex had tried to teach her this custom, thinking it beneath her dignity. Now she took Jake's hand without hesitation and shook it firmly. As equals, she agreed. 2 weeks later, the treaty was signed. This time, there was no grand ceremony with hundreds of witnesses. It was a simple affair in a quiet room. Queen Lyria signed her name. Commander Morrison signed his. Ambassador Katie Sullivan and Chancellor Vex witnessed. When it was done, Lyria looked at Jake. What you did, walking out without a word, it has become famous across the galaxy. People call it the silent response. Some say it was the most powerful diplomatic statement in a century. Jake smiled slightly. Sometimes, silence says more than any speech could. Will you teach me? Lyria asked. About humanity. About your ways of thinking. I want to understand your people better. I think that would be good, Jake said. And you can teach me about the Valorians. Real partnership means learning from each other. As they left the room together, not as enemies or as unequal partners, but as allies, Katie walked beside Chancellor Vex. Do you think it will last? She asked quietly. The alliance? Vex smiled, his old face wrinkling. I think it will. Because it was built on truth. The Queen learned that respect cannot be commanded. Commander Morrison learned that forgiveness is possible. Those are strong foundations. Back on Earth, the story of Jake Morrison spread quickly. The man who had walked away in silence and then returned to save those who had wronged him. People debated what it meant, what message it sent, but to Jake, it was simple. Humanity had not helped the Valorians because of treaties or politics or revenge. They had helped because it was right. And in the end, that was all that mattered. Not how old a species was, or how powerful its empire. What mattered was choosing to be better than your anger, stronger than your pride, and kinder than your hurt. That was what made humanity special. Not their technology, or their tactics, or their determination, but their refusal to let hate win. Queen Lyria stood on her balcony that evening and looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, human ships were patrolling the borders again, protecting both their space and hers. Somewhere out there, Jake Morrison was continuing his work of building peace. She had been 26 when she insulted him and thought herself wise. Now, a little older and much wiser, she understood that true wisdom was knowing you still had much to learn. And she was grateful for the lesson, however painful it had been.